Okay, here we go.
And this is Traveling Molly's in our virtual form. I welcome all of you to our evening of open mic and two wonderful featured poets, Sandra Beasley and Laura Swearingen-Steadwell. And let's see. Usually we have my co-host, Al DeGenova, who is not here tonight, leaving me to trip all over myself as I welcome you all here. We do have Kurt Heintz as our technical guy, who's doing all kinds of interesting things technically as we speak. We have been running Traveling Molly's for somewhere around 20 years. So we've got some of us who are kind of going up there in age, and as well as our younger complement. I'm so looking forward to tonight. And I am going to start with, let's see, with what we do every month. I'm just looking at, okay, here's all these messages. And we're not doing that anymore. So we generally start with the hosts reading a poem. I don't know if this is still true so much, but people don't like to be the first in the open mic. And so that's why the hosts start. And I'm going to read Inhabitants of the Cusp from The Uncertainty of Maps. Conceived under a horse moon, no doors on our seventh house, we wear our bodies uneasily, as if our skins shrunk in the drying cycle, walk both sides of yellow lines, or sit at the edges of chairs, one tooth loose, the new one pushing close behind. We whistle out of both sides of our mouths, unable to escape the idea that point is only part of counterpoint, that things are rarely either here or there, but live in both places at once, like the nose on a Picasso face. I get restless in the presence of those who think borders are drawn in indelible ink. Carrying a leaky chalice and a diaspora at my back, it is only in the margins and borderlands that I can take off my shoes. Washed up on the cusp of one thing or another, I walk with one foot in Aries while the other lags behind in Pisces. Being a middle child with two left feet to boot, sometimes I've wondered if I was born under any sign at all. Modern transits into postmodern, and the composer feels old-fashioned. The writer has an identity crisis. The sculptor takes another chisel in midstream. I am forever awaiting the moment when gravity switches off and all those things we like to count on being anchored, frying pans, mailboxes, the coffee out of cups, and then the cups themselves float silently into the air. A fly ball arcs into the summer sky, loses itself in a post-industrial sun, neither here nor there. It is in that place we find ourselves. Thank you. So, we're going to get started with, oh yes, thank you. Applause is all welcome. So let's see, how about if we start with an old regular, but we don't see her enough these days, Donna Voyer. Donna, let's get started with you.
Thanks, Nina. Good to see everybody. It's been a while, I know, since we've been in online land. So I'm going to read two short poems from my book, which came out last October from Sundress, called To Everything There Is. Lots of these poems, I realized as I was looking through today, drafts of them were read at Molly's. So I feel like it kind of helped birth this book. So just two short poems for you tonight. And the first one, the title, also serves as the first line. After leaving my father at the hospital on Christmas Day, everywhere I look, I see eruption. A startle of ice cracks off a branch above my head. A local dog goes from saunter to sprint at the sight of a squirrel. I have parked beneath a tree, still flush with berries, grape-like and browned, knocked loose by the fierce wind and exploded into mush on the hood of my car. Little organs, little clots, sticky as tar. I swipe at them with my gloves, rub them with snow to wash away the streaks before they freeze. Stroke, a slow movement across a surface, a new rowing across an old world. And then the second poem is the first poem in the book, and the title of this poem comes from a Ross Gay essay called Tomato on Board. And the title is In the Encyclopedia of Human Gestures. Kneeling again at the altar of my dog's shit, a genuflection of civic duty, the park equipped with plastic bags to ensure my reverence. I am struck by this position. For what better evidence of the divine than the workings of the body? All its wastes and contortions, the joints ball and socket rolling with the bend, the foot's tension arcing to balance on the toes, the orchestration of the hands that comb the grass to scoop the mess. The same hands that will later survey this aging flesh, the same hands that will run soft across the landscape of your body, the one I know by touch and scent, animal in my devotion, as we both falter toward our demise, into days that host obstacles our younger selves would dismiss, lowering instead into a different type of worship, one that requires no words. And isn't this also something holy? Both of us bending to curve into the other's failings, blending all the broken parts together in a silhouette that resembles prayer. Thank you.
It's always great to hear you going back and forth between muting and unmuting. So how about next? We have another regular from I'm seeing something that's just quite remarkable on my screen. It looks like death without a sickle. Anyway, having been at the Buzz Cafe for years when we've been live, we have a number of regulars, some of whom are here tonight. So the next person I'm calling up is Leonard Lunt. Leonard.
Hello, everybody. Three pieces from last November's 30/30 that Mary Carol Hackett organized on Facebook. Again, the lady in the woods signals the weather in her changes. A halter today, the thinnest of wedges obscuring while emphasizing, arcs and hills only made real in imagining. A flash of light on the lens leaves a milk-white line of hair above the red of pensive lips. I would read our letters again, did any survive, had we either one actually written and mailed a single one, and burn notes in the margins, the random white or cream or palest blue spaces to return to later, to question marks of varied length and clarity. It's nice I have musical accompaniment from the dogs, all right. She keeps everything in its more or less place, not so bothered by having to look when reaching for something as her younger self. But there's always a bare patch on her desk or table, right next to the sewn coaster for her tea mug. So the tomcat can lie against it and warm his dreams on days with little sunshine. That's an incontestable clause in their arrangement, each caring for the other, wants as well as needs, which spills beyond the banks of this love into other landscapes. So take good notes if you come courting, and be honest with yourself. Thank you. If I were the rust-colored wood that warms your legs, let's start that over again. Misread that. If I were the rust-colored wool that warms your legs as autumn takes control, I could feel the shifting curve and ripple of their muscles through soft skin with every move. If I were the old, rust-furred Tom whose head you scratch, whose back you stroke, your praises would echo in my purring satisfaction. And if I could spend the afternoon as the book you hold, an oft-read tale bound in rust-tanned leather marked by love, I would take your rapt attention and reward it by turns. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Leonard. Some nice stuff. How about, let's see. How about Heatherly? Is it Mar or Mare?
Actually, I cannot pronounce it properly. It's Arabic we only recently discovered, and I can't do a hard H. So I just go by Heatherly in the writing world.
All right, we've got Heatherly here. Welcome.
Thank you. So I just have one kind of caveat I have to tell you. I typically in the writing world I would say I am poetry adjacent and not necessarily embedded in the world of poetry. I edit a lot of poetry and I work with a lot of people who are stronger poets than I am in other genres, but I typically work in prose. So I only have one thing for you, and I hope you'll forgive any faux pas, given that, like I said, I'm good at being poetry adjacent, but not so much with actually doing it and reading it live. Okay, so this is just untitled, and it's not letting me control it. There we go. Okay, so let me start off. My eyebrows have a disability, are disabled. They got roughed up back in the 90s, trying on slimness. Some damage self-inflicted, but others not so much. A few scars to mark the incompetence of an ER doctor, too scared even to touch one. How will we ever go where no disabled woman has gone before with that attitude? I was the cheapest, most expensive mobility device my eyebrows could find on their income, which isn't much since they're disabled, have a disability, and had to give up a few dreams along the way. They used to do pretty well on their own, strong, but not rude, a little too Mediterranean when they were young. But things change with time, grow, shrink, explore, or keep it basic. But like the tower at Pisa, these arches have become icons with age, even as they slowly lean, staring askance at tourists. My eyebrows enjoy life, even if some people just holler at the top of their lungs, OMG, they're disabled. Not OMG, they have a disability, like it was a crime or a snuff film, shocking, offensive, rubbernecking in full view of 100 upright citizens who feel disability is a slight to the personhood of mob rule, justifying yelling in a public place where a wife's face turns red, because despite deep-seated approval, all fall silent and turn to stare. A millisecond passes. My eyebrows laugh, arcing towards the stars like Spock's, especially after that one run-in with a disposable razor one Christmas. Face to abled face, eyebrows to disabled eyebrows, a challenge and a challenger. Disabled always wins at chicken. Finally, the captain asks, how long can you, would-be explorer, stand firm in the face of what you fear most? Bones reminds my eyebrows that without gravity, they could float weightless, rotating, and become knowing smiles, doubling the focal point of a famous painting. But once the question is asked, Mona Lisa remains silent, mysterious. She obeys no commands. Even after countless syndication contracts and numerous spin-offs, each reinvention flaunting the same style, and one massive tragedy watched on a TV wheeled into the school library, his officers are quiet. They know that without my eyebrows, disabled or not, the only answer they can give is the deep silence of space.
Love that. Thank you. I hope you'll be with us again sometime. So, how about, by the way, is Rita Martinez here? Kurt, do you see her? All right. I hope she's not missing because I forgot to send her the Zoom link. How about Ruth Goring? Ruth, it's nice to see you.
Likewise, and I believe this is my first time with you all, although some of you are familiar. And so I get to hear some people that I haven't ever heard before, and I'm really excited about that. Happy International Women's Day. Many of my friends from other countries make a bigger deal of this than we do here in the US. And I really appreciate it because the rights of women, of course, are really important to me. So I've picked out, I think I'll just read one poem. And this is one that got published last year in Crosswinds Poetry Journal. And it's dedicated to Raíces, Texas, and its beautiful advocacy at the border. I've done a little bit of translation work for them from time to time. And so this is a little bit of an amalgam of some of that work in terms of the references. It's called Translating is Like Writing a Poem. Finding her words, I light them, blow into their coals. Polvo for dust, pago for payment, and soledad is loneliness. We call my Colombian brother-in-law cuñado, and up from childhood shadows comes the word for wake, velorio, candles around an open casket. I fall into her story, its terse assertions and complex explanations. I hunch and sweat to give her back her own palabras with no complicated verbs. The fight to become real is hard enough. It covers us with dust, the things we sell and what is taken from us. The things one cannot tell one's husband, ripped things that must be folded over and over. Those years we spent gazing out bus windows with blank faces. This work is a cold channel, words fastening and releasing, without embellishment, only how many of each thing, distances measured in footfalls, the infinite reasons for silence, the infinite vergüenza, the one sufficient word for embarrassment and shame, and to be clothed in it, to wear handprints of violence. The few who read must wear this story pricked into their skin. Thank you.
Thanks, Ruth. Glad to have you here. So how about next, Ray Zeimer, or Zemer. You'd think that I would have remembered that from last month. Ray.
Yeah, it's Zemer. Thank you.
Cool.
So with this nice weather here, I'm watching the river and thinking about getting out in my canoe again and thinking about paddling with some friends. This is an elegy for an old friend named Steve Kirchen. They think you cannot lose your way just floating downstream with the current. But we know how channels split and weave and slow sometimes to steaming backwaters thick with duckweed, so mired in sluggish oxbows of indecision. I'll remember all the times you paddled through. From blue spring deeps, your memory will lift me out and carry me for 1 mile more, replenish me for one more hopeful after. As a paddle blade will slip below, sculling smoothly with the flow, liquid as a dream, your voice will whisper riffles in the river when I hesitate to draw. Your kindly spirit will come to me with cries of conscience, chirping on the verges of my soul, and I will count on you to always keep me honest with the earth. Thanks. This is called Trailer Park Incident. Fading daylight wicks from the sky, night tar thick and sticky between trailers where moonlight ought to be. A big man walks a small dog, footsteps crunching on the gravel road. Shadows outlined from a Christmas light glow, and something happens down in the dark. Some big dog tears from his owner's leash, or woman feels a fist, or a man's betrayed. Something unexpected, something brutal and bloody. Shouts, accusations, curses ring out, and a lone voice cries, "How could you?" The dog whimpers, and the man entreats, "How could you do that?" Panic and rush, slapping doors, as the neighbors descend from their decks to the road. Car doors slam, engines roar. Headlight angels fly across the porch screens. The pish of a beer can, glow of a cigarette out in the gloom. And deep into the night they intone, murmuring voices, all wondering, how could you? And this is just some, I'm always interested in ancient history. This is called Love Among the Gepids. History, as written by those who told it, depicts the fierce barbarians as savage brutes without a trace of humanity or common grace. Still, all those ages that they roamed, they must have sometimes loved their wives or nagged their husbands, doted on their children, mourned their losses. We know the Vandals coveted their neighbors' shiny baubles. They liked to have nice things, I'm sure of it. And weren't the Goths at times quite jolly? Didn't they carouse and sing and pass out by the fire? Implausibly, there must have been some Huns who hated horses, wanted nothing more than homes of stone, stables secluded in the woods. When I think about my forebears, I have little hope of finding royal blood along my lines. But I am fine with the idea of some barbarian singer lost to time, trading verses for a cup of wine. Thank you very much.
Right, thanks for being with us tonight. So I just want to welcome Rita Martinez. I'm glad you're able to make it. And once again, we have a few new people here tonight. And so for those of you, I'm just going to remind you, it's 5 minutes per poet or prose person. And I think I'm going to bring up I don't know, let's see, where are you? Susan Nordmark. Whether you would consider yourself a prose writer or hybrid or whatever, but we're about to find out. Susan.
You know, I've always thought of my work as stories, but and I've been writing some criticism and a long story, but recently I started writing these things that were more poemy, kind of prose poemy, and they became kind of non-linear. So I guess they're kind of hybrid, and I don't really think it's important to label these things. I don't think it personally is very important to label any kind of genre. It just doesn't work for me at all. Anyway, I'm just going to read 2 pieces. I don't want to go over time. I don't want to take anyone else's time. So I'm going to read some new work. Let's see, let's find that. So this first piece is called Tracks. "You're the wayward one, aren't you?" said the teacher. I was sitting on my yoga mat, distracted by a magazine. "I think everyone in this room is offering you respect," I said to her. I meant to give it. In a little free library near my house, I found 3 Adrian Rich books. A woman who knits miniature elfin sweaters as Christmas tree decorations offered to trade a bauble with me in exchange for that poetry. There has been less rain this summer, and many fields have dried out so deeply that the laser readers from airplanes reveal hidden ancient pathways and stone circles no one knew were there. Rich's voice. Oh, it just went away. Just a minute. There we go. Rich's voice, olive gray and twilight slate, drew me down the page until one word flung ox blood. Startled, I held my skull plates, let disturbance fall, and climbed back up. But the wrong word was still there and left me distrustful, hesitant to slide back into the lines. I read that every creature, if it lives long enough, gets cancerous tumors, except elephants, naked mole rats, and bats. I cannot keep up with learning new software. 3 people I know have abnormal brain scans Their doctors disagree about what the images mean. The boy across the street dyed his hair with bleach so that it stood up like a bunch grass hummock. He was taken out of school for poor social behavior. A lab test showed I had a bacterial disease, and the drug for it turned my urine orange. I want to go back and say, please change the word, but that poet is gone. I sat on my porch wearing a parka, waiting for my feral cat to appear and play eye-blinking games with me. She and I have been chatting like this for 7 years. Insects carry bones on the outside of their bodies. Some beings, even if they have no brain, like sea anemones, seem to know they have a right and left side. The aorta shoots tributaries for blood out through the chest in a pattern unique to each person. A friend who writes mystical stories told me there is a tall pink angel standing next to me. It has no sex. I haven't decided whether to let it guide me. This piece is called Lost House Index. 7. Orchid air roots can reach throughout a room like fingers twining other hands for sun. 16. Why don't we keep glass Christmas balls in balls? Why don't we keep glass Christmas balls in bowls in summer to refine the heat? 37. Cliffs know how to build desert burrows like hollow gourds. 2. Once people stored drinking gloves in a drawer in their cars. 31. Clothing was 2 things, leather or cloth. If poor, you had grass. 4. The last California wolf spent years living in a museum vitrine, a diorama of Chaparral Hills painted behind him. There was no plastic, and I can't remember this. 15. Wind throws twilight down a meadow toward a house with no doors, clouds blowing through its skin, broken floorboards snapping at my feet. 27. A Viking ship engraved a passionate body, a metonym gone to sun-risen beast. 11. I want to walk through Stonehenge under ecclesiastical birds. 52. The dog next door cried over time with less exuberance, as if by crumpling in cubic pattern, she could bound her terror in a shape of sounds. 26. Her owner unwrapped silent flowers that look like women's geodes and are toxic. Cathedral meat hung from his rear view. 3. I saw a famous rock musician's wife in a health food store, and without makeup, she was so beautiful. I wanted to be her, even to carry her sadness. 22. A white cedar horse alone in a chert field strung her neck along the fallow to smell my lips. 41. Plants taste different in animation than to people. 17, hormones keep me melted. 9, owls have a knowing look, like my father's phosphorescence in his 60s at the bottom of his life, razored yet vigilant in his cast-off coat. 10, weeds often sprout bridal feathers to split light with their joy and anger.
That's just wonderful stuff, Susan. Thank you so much. And thank you for being with us. I just want to say hello to people out, our YouTube viewers. I hope you're enjoying what we've been doing so far tonight. We have 3 more people in the open mic, and then we'll be heading over to our features for the evening. So next person, how about, actually there's more than that. How about Patty McMillan? Patty.
Okay, thank you. So I have a visual. I just realized. Let's see if I can hold it up. There it is. That's, as many people will recognize, that is a scan of my spinal column that was taken today. And the poem is actually an older poem that was published in 2008. It's called Michigan Ave 2003. After a morning at nuclear medicine where the X-ray guy and I discuss his recent pituitary gland surgery, they went in under his upper lip, which is still sore, and whether there will be war in Iraq, I'm hungry and it's raining and a lot of people have black umbrellas out, but I don't have one, while others line up for caramel corn, which honestly has never appealed to me. So I go looking for a book by Langston Hughes, anything really, walking maybe 15 or 20 blocks to the public library to see what he thought, though his war was different, checking carefully at each corner, even when the walking man signal comes on, because God knows accelerators can stick, and that's not even to mention that more and more people every day careen around city streets in barely disguised versions of military vehicles, permitting little or no peripheral vision. And although I get wet, really kind of soaked, except for my feet, which somehow managed to stay dry, I keep thinking about how the X-ray guy said I was his second client in one day to call the president a loose cannon, which is why he likes his job. It's the people. And as I zipped my jeans, how he handed me, at no extra charge, prints of one screen showing my left hip and a second one showing 4 of my vertebrae, each accompanied by numbers and plus or minus variances and computer plotted graphs, and said it looked like everything was okay, though he wasn't a doctor, and how I folded the prints into my backpack and thanked him and moved on, feeling kind of strangely proud of the density of my bones. So thank you. 18 years later, it is officially osteoporosis. So I'm very excited about that. This is a more recent poem, and it refers to Eshu, who is one of the Orishas of Yoruban religion, not really a god, almost more like a saint or a bodhisattva. But in this case, it's also my cousin. It's called A Talk with Cousin Eshu. We are not blessed with patience, Cousin Eshu and I. It may even be we share an addiction to change. We swear one another to secrecy as we drink the blood oath of red ginger beer. Yes, and cousin throws the palm nuts, summons Ogun, asks after my destiny. Eshu doesn't trust doctors or vaccines, thinks diseases are illusions, and tells me I'm stronger and closer to freedom than I think I am. Every corner is one to be turned, every blind curve an opportunity to stamp on the gas pedal and screech toward the unknown, future, even if our brakes are worn thin and cousin has disabled our airbags. We don't care if there are monsters under the bed. We'll crawl in there with them. Nothing scares us half as much as sitting still, waiting to be found. We know exactly where we are, even if you don't. Thank you.
Patty, if anybody gives you some caramel corn and you're not going to eat it, send it my way.
Oh, really? All right. It hasn't happened yet, but I sure will keep that in mind, Lena.
All right. Well, thank you. And next up, Rita Martinez, let's hear what you've got for us.
Hi, sorry I wasn't able to sign up earlier. Thank you so much for including me. Can you see me all right? Okay, so I'm going to read two poems from my poetry collection, The Jane and Bertha in Me. And the poems are inspired by the lives of the Brontes and by the novel Jane Eyre. So the first poem is called I Am Thine, Charles Thunder. I am thine, Charles Thunder, is how Charlotte signs a letter for BFF Ellen Nussey. Slipping into disguise is second nature for CB in 1836, yet there's always a hint of truth surrounding Bronte's mystery men. In Greek, her name means thunder. Charles Thunder is a suave fast talker, raven hair slicked, decked in requisite Boss or impeccable Armani. I imagine Mr. Thunder is actually Zeus, playing hooky among the roulette wheels and neon lights of Vegas, a busty broad dangling from each bicep, blowing on his dice. Thunder the kind who thinks nothing of leaning over, softly kissing a woman's hand and whispering, your room or mine. So thank you. The next poem I'm going to read, the last one. It's called Letter to Bertha. So it's about the infamous mad woman in the attic. And there's an epigraph from White Sargasso Sea that says, there are always two deaths, the real one and the one people know about. Letter to Bertha. If I could, I'd save you. Flies beneath your bed hiss, Bertha, Antoinette, Bertha. Though you plug your ears with lima beans, syllables seep in like dust pushing past closed shutters, like locoweed creeping across the garden wall, the mute battlements. Better to bust out of your cell, to let the oversized roach motel burn before your so-called husband stuffs you in a body bag, seals you like a cracker in a Ziploc. I'd set you up in a beachside condo stocked with your favorite dahlias, Arabian Nights, black satins, Burma gems. I'd hire a good massage therapist and enroll you in yoga. I'd take you to a spa, treat you to a mud bath, restore those charcoal-stained feet to their original hue. Have a stylist trim that cave woman hair. You take up kickboxing and swimming. You'd see a shrink who specializes in pyromania, who'd prescribe an antidepressant cocktail for those unpredictable mood swings and panic attacks. After shopping for a new wardrobe, a red dress, and matching slingbacks, we'd climb the Statue of Liberty. We'd toss your straitjacket into the ocean. And along with it, each vestige of sadness that has tinged your bloodshot eyes, I'd make you forget Edward. I'd cradle your face in my hands and I'd kiss you. A hypnotic lip lock extinguishing each bad memory, obliterating suffering from your lexicon. Bertha, if I could, I'd save you. Thank you.
Thanks, Rita. Nice to hear your work. So we have two more people. How about Molly Sturdivant? Molly, let's hear what you got.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Nina. Let's see. All right. The first one is called Everything Comes from Dust and Returns to Scattered. Nights I seek my bearings, I eat how the wolf eats a mink, my only cairn being ravenousness, a circular motion. So I sleep with the compass as a lover who I know makes things up. We dream south together. Nights I hunger for a story, I see only movement. Whole ships of packages, rapaciousness, superfluities the earth has never asked for. So much is given, sharing makes it true. I have in common with the printing of money, the writing of fiction. Compass draws their finger down my cleavage like a path finds their own way, own water, knowing, settling, will mimic dying. They laugh when I garden. Compass continues in the seasons of my hips. Hunting in the fall behind my knees, camping in delicate kisses. In soft river valleys in the morning, the grass smells different than night. Compass, before you go, can I tell you? Mornings I call Shayla to mind. The human I loved is still there, but our notebook of phone numbers we lost on a bus when a man told us things were getting better is not. Mornings I get lost on a bus. Clark Street looks dusted and salt. Snow is gray. I have no messages. Spring is bare branches banging overhead at the park. God, this wind's unstoppable. I'm compostable. The Holocene is not ineffable. Years I love, I think of my young child and compose for him a tradition describing glaciers. Stories of winter. I'll tell him about snow and slow November, easy May. I'll say, look, you're not really from anywhere. There's not one thing you are, just the relations you bear by necessity to the beings around you. Seasons your shoots don't come up, it's okay. You are cornered by your body, I mean. Gardens are no mere hobby. God, how they become us. This is very new, therefore possibly terrible. So I thought I would read it to strangers because that sounded wise. It is called I Paint My Past Traveling. In all my traveling, the dopant scenes befog me with their marble and quarries, whiskey and cable cars. I give them texture now. They were to me then half what they have become. How many whole mouths have I seen? The shepherd's gold bicuspids laughing with his wife about that dog. The Norwegian girl, her pash was starlight and the ice was there before humans. What would I give for a broad enough stroke? Your frown, your crooked smirk, a face and words and the time to weave them, the time, the rain. On the pitch, the rugby pitch, my cousin walked across. Water slides off his nose, rain gnashes laughing teeth. The time, I bought candy at a petrol station in Berlin. The attendant sang with a song that came on as I walked out. Back then, I never walked out, imagining voices and faces excised from all my future encounters. Sometimes, we complete a painting by deciding what not to add. But it's more like the gone thing burns for the first time only as gone. Because it's gone, I see it now. And I have one tiny poem I'll end with. It's an after poem for a Cuban poet, Angel Cuadra. It's called Self-Portrait as Incomplete. I traced my footsteps too. I found that I had once gone west, and there were culpatory scraps of art the whole way, forgotten lyrics to songs I say I love, a self I thought was too great for me. I had not yet learned how to expand without rarefaction. It has been 14 years since my last confession. Poet, forgive me. Some days all I do is laze. work the motions as if standing next to my own self. Poet, something is watching me. I walk my modest penance, setting feet in my old prints. She is a common hawk. She stares so long I return it. My body arced across, her black eye is stretching, filling. Thank you.
Molly, I can't wait for that book to come out. We'll have to start sending it out.
I gotta get
So,
organized.
what's that?
I gotta get organized.
So wrapping up the open mic, Carlo Matos, who just had a new book come out, right?
It's about to come out.
Okay.
Fall. Yeah.
When is it due?
Say again?
When is it due?
In the fall.
Okay.
Yeah.
Natural or C-section?
What's that?
Natural or C-section?
Yeah, right. Let's hope natural. Thank you, Nina, for having me. I'm happy to be here. And I'm really excited to read these two poems because they are from the new manuscript called We Prefer the Damned, which will be coming out. My publisher said fall, but the contract said December. So I don't know about this. There might be some shenanigans going on here. Hopefully fall will be better. Okay, so this poem is called The Beautiful Ones. For those of you who know Prince's Purple Rain, that's a reference to the sexiest song ever written by anyone ever. Okay, The Beautiful Ones. We were young, in the time of life scored to popular music, marked unrelenting, marked restless, marked wicked, like Prince's purple smile and too tight pants. My beautiful Azorian American prince neglected the spaces in the words, between the words, missed the instinct to long where something is withheld. Do you want him or do you want me? Because I want you, want his assembly and what he gathered about himself, the forked approach to the lintel of his mother's house, the smattering of old Iberian surnames, the nautical telescope, some fado songs. We wore purple in those days. We're not stylish. We're thankful that our girls didn't fall so easy for Anglo guys. What about the boys? Movies are quiet on the boys, as are all the books written in English. So we have no idea where to look, nor no one to ask. Those other boys brave our neighborhoods, those malditos who belong better than we do, thinking they own the place, something nagging in their looks, the word poor at the ready, like a pubic hair in the backs of their mouths. Sadly, our displays fall far short of their mark. The mills, the tenements, the disappointments, the entire pall of appearances leading to the simple and obvious conclusion that our food is not for eating, our clothes are not for wearing, and our rooms are not for living. Thank you. Okay, this last one is called Who's the Boss? And it's a reference to the 1980 sitcom with Tony Danza playing Tony Maselli and Alyssa Milano. Who's the Boss? And this is dedicated to Christopher Larkosh. You could keep house for me anytime, Mr. Maselli. In the opening credits, I was never sure if I was the vacuum or the drapes, a brand new life around the bend. My 7th grade locker was clipped to the edges with pictures of the quick-fisted Alyssa Milano, your fictional daughter who looked so much like all the girls in my school. If I could pretend she was Azorian, then I could pretend you were too, that beautiful Italian-American mug of yours, swarthy like all the men in my family. And when I see you in your workman's gloves working the speed bag, I imagine us trading blows, my nails painted blue nude under my wraps like something out of Picasso or Matisse. We know about fighting, but we can know about art too, right, Tony? They never tell us that. They conveniently leave that part out, or they mock our propensity for enthusiasm. Always a joke at our expense. I'd rather you were nude blue in the moonlight. O-A-A-O, not the way you'd say it. You stepping slowly out of Angela's fussy bathtub in a series of sexy fast cuts like an odalisque, a marble statue, a boxer's broken nose, leaving the ring. Thank you.
That was beautiful. And this has been a lovely, lovely open mic. So let's give them all a hand. And let's also thank Kurt Heintz for making this possible, being our technical guy who is also a poet, but for our purposes on the second Monday of every month, we get to have him bringing us to you some semblance of live. Kurt, you want to say hi? You might not. Sandra and Laura, who we're about to hear from. Welcome back to Traveling Molly's. And I do want to tell you, you know that stuff that was written next to the pictures of our features? We like to pay our features. We think that that should be a thing for poets and writers. And not often enough is it. So because we can't pass the hat, if I would really urge you to buy their books, and you can go to their websites, you can check out their books, reach out to their publishers. Don't for the rest of the week, if you would, go to Amazon, because the workers are in the midst of trying to get a union going, and our way of showing solidarity with them is to stay off Amazon for the week, but it's better to buy from the publishers directly anyway. So we're going to start tonight with Sandra Beasley, whose poetry I really enjoyed even before finding her on Facebook in one of the groups we're in together. She's the author of 4 poetry collections: Made to Explode, Count the Waves, I Was the Jukebox, which won the 2009 Barnard Women Poets Prize, and Theories of Falling, as well as Don't Kill the Birthday Girl, Tales from an Allergic Life, a disability memoir and cultural history of food allergies. She served as the editor for Vinegar and Char, Verse from the Southern Foodways Alliance. Honors for her work include the 2019 Munster Literature Center's John Montague International Poetry Fellowship, and that is a mouthful. And 5 DC commissions on the arts. Oh, I forgot, a 2015 NEA Fellowship and the 5 DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities Fellowships. So she must be rich, but probably not really. She lives in Washington, DC. She is a writer after all. Sandra Beasley, I'm looking forward to it. Give her a hand.
Man, one thing poets are not is rich. Oh my goodness. Thank you all. I am so grateful to Nina and Kurt and just everybody who's responsible for this series taking place. I'm noticing there's circling helicopters right now as I speak to you from Southwest DC, which feels weirdly appropriate. So forgive me if you hear background noise. It's just DC. I want to celebrate the energy and the spirit of what Nina and Al have created. Just thinking, it reminds me in particular of Iota Club and Cafe's long-running series in Northern Virginia. Unfortunately, that venue closed a few years back, part of a wave of venues, unfortunately, but we're no longer able to create space. But I'm just reminded of this collaborative energy, people reading things, people sharing new stuff. And that means I'm going to read a poem I did not intend to read, but I was inspired by Donna's reading, our first of the open mic lineup, which was, among other things, had a great moment appreciating dogs. And this is my poem that appreciates cats. It came out of a prompt that Ross Gay gave a group of us, where he said, write about something that gives you joy. And I was going through a really dark period, and there was this one thing I could come up with that gave me joy, and it was this response that my beloved cat Whiskey gave me each time that I came home. So this poem, which is from all the poems I'll read tonight, are from Made to Explode. This poem is called Lazarus. The cat flops and swims along the carpet, ecstatic in her clawing, because I am alive, despite the 3 days absence that she took as my death. She could vomit in sheer joy, and later she will, but for now it's headbutts and pantomime of mewing with her jaw that ached and ran dry of sound after my first night gone. Though I know each of us would be better off if she did not care quite so much, if she displayed the feline diffidence promised. Water, kibble, company, she'll be fine. I confess to delighting in this small miracle I perform in her eyes, this resurrection. After a brief pause to lovingly tend to her own asshole, the cat resumes her yawp and purr. Could I learn to greet the world this way, to take nothing for granted? First, I'd have to think you all had died, of course, but death would be temporary. Truth is, I've tried otter routes to ecstasy. So as I mentioned before, I'm in DC, and I thought I would read a few prose poems which make up the second section of the book. These are all prose poems that consider the peculiarity of life in DC, which is both a city and the nation's capital, in which the realities of the everyday and the symbolic are often coexisting. I found myself, my father and I always go to the shows of the Shakespeare Theater, and I found myself one day being in the theater when Ruth Bader Ginsburg, of course, our beloved Supreme Court Justice, was in the house, so to speak, or at least rumored to be, which was a really great moment up until I stopped and really thought about the play that we were all about to watch together, which inspires this prose poem, which is simply called Kiss Me. Ruth Bader Ginsburg sits in the 19th row of my heart, while on stage, a woman has been conscribed to the shape of a shrew. The actress has 40-carat eyes, an aquiline nose, her shoulders slight, her waist small enough. She is spanked over our hero's knee. Everyone is laughing except the conductor, who must steady his baton, and the house manager who has seen it all before, and the actors directed instead to be aghast, agape, gawking, agog, whatever Cole Porter rhymes with dismayed, and Ginsburg, who adjusts the pearl clipped to her ear. She curls the program in her lap. This is tiring. Attending theaters of the heart. She doesn't relish it as Sandra Day O'Connor did, sipping Prosecco at the intermission of Porgy and Bess. The gangster's soft shoe, reminding us to brush up on our Shakespeare. The actress sings, I am ashamed that women are so simple. Soon Kate will be tamed. That's how we know the ending is happy. So another part of this section of prose poems are what I would call monument and memorial pieces. And they're all kind of arranged with this sequence of titles where you get the quick handle on where the speaker is and then midnight. And anybody who lives in this area knows that the monuments and memorials as handled by the National Park Service are typically open 24 hours a day. And that's actually often the best time to go visit them, is middle of the night when you can just park on the street and walk right up or approach right up. So these pieces are considering the ways that history gets inscribed, but also edited. The fact that there's always parts of the official story, the celebration, and then parts that get cut away. And this next one, as someone who grew up going to both a high school and then a college, both in Thomas Jefferson or Mr. Jefferson's shadow, it's very much reconsidering the legacy that Thomas Jefferson brought into American culture. Jefferson, Midnight. In another version of this story, he is a naturalist who dabbled in politics. He reinvented the plow. He joined the American Philosophical Society's Bone Committee, and while trying to prove the great Western lion, gave us our first giant sloth. He shipped a rotting moose to France to demonstrate the greatness of our mammals. He is a father of paleontology who didn't believe extinction was part of God's plan. He asked Lewis and Clark, should they encounter the mammoth, to capture one. For months, his seawall has been sinking, the Potomac's mud flats sucking at support timbers. In 1918, and for 6 summers after, the tidal basin was chlorinated, so this bank became a beach, whites only. Spiders who are drawn to rising heat populate the ceiling of Jefferson's memorial. Once the sun sets, the temperature drops. They lose their grip and fall. Bodies bounce off my shoulders, bodies land in my hair. Guards call this the spider rain. Thank you. So much of this past season has been about trying to find these small corners and niches of peace, being adjacent at such a turbulent time, and also literally living blocks from the Capitol, finding things that I would usually look forward to, like 4th of July or inauguration some years, being instead kind of battlegrounds. And so I'll read a very, very brief poem that is just speaking to that attempt to find solace as a DC person in this time, a time that for much of the last 4 or 5 years felt like an occupied city. Little Love poem. The 6 a.m. sun considers everything, humming its way past the Capitol. I reheat yesterday's coffee, put lima beans into a pot. Ford hook, always Ford hook. Drizzle of olive oil, pinch of salt, shake of chili flakes. The chicken broth comes to boil for a minute before I cover, simmer. Soon he'll wake, and I'll ask him to put a record on, something with no words, bowls, spoons, a single twist of pepper. So I I'm a big believer that, frankly, that the best readings leave people, wanting more. So I honestly, I'm just going to read a couple more poems, but I wanted specifically to choose poems that were in engagement with where this series is based, which is Illinois. So my grandmother and grandfather were born and now are buried in Kinmundy, Illinois. And that is a small town a few hours away from Chicago, although Chicago was where, when my grandmother went to music school, she got to live, and you'll hear a poem that references that time. So my connection with Illinois is kind of, it's where my family is. My mother's family's from. It's where my namesake is from. My full name is Sandra Beasley, and the Farrells are buried in that little town in Kinmundy. So I'm going to read a couple of poems. Much of what Made to Explode is considering, I started off working with food because, as was mentioned, I edited this anthology of food poems in 2018. Food took me to history. History took me to American culture, and more specifically, my grandparents' generation. So there's a few poems in here that deal with my grandfather's time with NASA. He was actually one of the naval flight physicians that worked with some of the astronauts, the early astronauts. But I'm going to read a couple of poems that are thinking just as much about my grandmother, that little girl who went to Chicago, but is laid to rest in Kinmundy. Winter garden photograph. That's an odd phrase. Winter garden photograph is from a book by Roland Barthes called Camera Lucida. And it's a book that is an elegy. He talks extensively about the winter garden photograph, but refuses to give it to the reader. Barthes withholds this image from Camera Lucida. Henriette, the 5-year-old who grows up to be his mother, her hands on her hips. He couldn't bear that our gaze might find her ordinary, as one might find this snapshot of my grandparents arriving in Rapid City, South Dakota. Her precise handwriting on the back declares their America the Beautiful tour. Grandma Jean's jaunty scarf, Carl in his crisp white shirt, 1990. In 1991, I pick up the calendar she kept by her reading chair. Her neat script fills the square of January 22nd. Carl died, life is over. The woman in green jacket and green skirt, full throttle, smiles toward the camera as she rounds the corner of the terminal, purse under one arm and blue carry-on under the other. Because this photograph is not mine to keep, I take a photograph of it. Barthes says I am now operator and referent, sliver of thumb and palm visibly cradling Kodak print. The rest of her January 1991 stays blank. February, blank. March, bare. But then a church meeting is scheduled. She pencils in a lunch. Yes, she'll come to the recital. Her cursive wakens the days. Even in winter, the garden can call itself to bloom. So I'll just finish with this poem. And again, thank you all for your time. I'm so thrilled to hear great work tonight. And I'm looking forward to hearing Laura's reading as well. Also, if anybody ever says in a workshop that you can't write about grandmothers, that it's too sentimental or something, screw them. Just, like write about the grandmothers. We need more poems about our grandmothers and grandfathers right now. Card table. A practical gift for moving to the city. Good cherry squared around black vinyl, 4 long legs that fold within itself as a greyhound does, disappearing into a nap. Just big enough for a bridge match. If I'd ever had 4 people willing to kiss knees, just big enough to let me call a corner of that S Street studio my breakfast nook, stacked with a week's worth of newspapers while I ate cereal cross-legged on my futon. Just big enough to pull out every few years and complain how small the table was, too crowded as a desk, too low for my chairs. In January, we stared at the strange space wedged between 2 kitchen doorways. Might as well try the card table. We stacked onions there, then potatoes, then tomatoes and peaches, and it became the chopping table, stirring table, serving table. Now the first morning she is gone, I see a swipe in the vinyl where a hot dish burned through and realize I forgot to ask for anything. A ring, her sheet music. So what I have is this reminder that she too was once a girl in a city and that she knew I'd always need a table. Thank you all. I'm so thrilled to be here with you tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. That was lovely. Do you want to just say a couple more things about the book, including where people can find it?
Sure. So the book is called Made to Explode. It just came out in February with W.W. Norton. So I'm fortunate enough that that is distributed at a large number of independent bookstores. If you're looking for something that does shipping, bookshop.org. Just to give a quick shout out, I'm sure there's some Chicago area bookstores that, Women and Children First, for example, and bookstores that are dear to me include Politics and Prose, Square Books down in Oxford, Mississippi. So I'm proud of the collection. It's my 4th, and I welcome any conversation that comes out of it.
Great, thank you. Now, listen, I had a couple of thoughts. One of them was, so IOTA, which I read at about 10 years ago, they closed because of the pandemic.
No, they closed. Anybody who knows that area of Northern Virginia knows that the development has been so aggressive, and Whitlow's on Wilson, one of the neighboring restaurants, has kind of held on, but it really marks the last of that kind of moment of nightlife culture that existed, where a place could serve diner food during the day and then convert to a really amazing music venue at night. So they had that was more of real estate pressures pre-pandemic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is, this summer Chicago experienced, as we had not to this degree before, the helicopters circling because something political was going on. And I'm wondering if you think maybe QAnon has finally showed their heads in DC, and that's why the helicopters are circling.
Well, I don't know about that, but what I'll say is that as someone who grew up in the larger area and has lived in the city since 2002, it's really striking because DC has a bad habit of setting temporary security measures that harden and become permanent. So, just as, I can remember as a kid, you could walk right up to the White House, you could walk right up, all these things that were very permeable. So I will just say that I really view with some alarm the fencing that's up around the Capitol right now. And I would encourage folks beyond DC, for whom it's a very personal issue. It's literally the streets we use every day, the streets our ambulances need to use. I would love to see more public understanding and pressure that we should not have to feel like a barricaded Capitol. It's a town, it's a city, it's where people live. So yeah, so it's the steady stream of helicopters. Luckily, Eleanor Holmes Norton is on the case. If anybody can get him to retreat, it's her.
Yep. And with any luck, sometime in the next 4 years, we'll pass a bill to make DC a state.
I think we would all welcome that mightily. Yeah, no taxation without representation.
What a concept. So moving along, we're going to turn to Laura Swearingen-Steadwell, who lived in Chicago for some period of time. I don't know how many years that was. And so hopefully some of your Chicago buds are out there and watching from YouTube. And it's so great to be able to get you here without having to get you here. Laura is the author of All Blue So Late, winner of the 2017 Cave Canem Northwestern University Poetry Prize, and How to Seduce a White Boy and 10 Easy Steps on Right Bloody Publishing. Laura is currently an adjunct faculty at the Kansas City Art Institute, trying, with an emphasis, I think, on the word trying, to teach artists how to write. When school's out, she lives in Inwood, New York, with her partner. Laura, it's so great that we were able to get you here.
Thank you, Nina. I'm excited to be here. I'm doing this right?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. I'm not going to say a lot. I really just want to read some poems. So I'm going to get into it. Habitat. Keep telling Emily Dickinson to go on a date with Brian from accounting. Dare her. She'll chase him around the garden with a hatchet. Don't let her catch him. She thinks human bone makes great fertilizer. Emily stays clowning. She stays wearing white past Labor Day. Keep asking, when will you scatter yourself like birdseed, Emily? Tell her everyone you know lives in a box of light and plastic on your desk. Emoticon, meme, friend, explain. Yes, her house smells of hardwood and leather. Yes, the gasp of her dress ghosting her. Oh, her doppelgangers bound with ribbon. Oh, secrets and confidants. Emily wields her flamethrower with solemnity. Do you believe in grace? Her hair burnished by torchlight. Do you know how very long it takes the world to end? Somewhere inside, the vague sounds of a piano, the tumult of trees, dashing leaves on the ground. Thanks. I'm nervous. I always get nervous when I read, no matter how often I do this. So this one's called Valentine Up Top. At Cedar Point, I become American again, which is not to say I'm not still Black. I'm with 4 grown friends, all Black, unabashed about it, but innocent, just children again, milling among Midwestern families, camps, teams, neon, inordinate, screams from visors, fanny packs, t-shirts with insulting logos, soaked with sweat, but everyone's united in the sun and ululating dream. June, afternoon, swings, hills and loops, flashing games, plush prizes, foods sweet, salty, fatty. We squeal our delight and surprise, want to know the deeper meaning of names. Cobra, teacup, millennium. We laser tag and mallet immortal gophers, giddy for golden tangles of funnel cake, foamy flavored ice, for fries steeped in chili, bacon, cheese, all in. Grown as we are, older arteries and bones, we ride, shift our vision, uplift, the will to live rising to a clean, high note, the impassive lake shimmer and spinning toys below. I have known such fear. I have known fear of the body, of the beloved, of my own magic brain, my soft, wild heart. The pure fear, should it end all wrong, the good work undone. Come evening, the lights click on and we transform purple and blue. The garish fluorescents fade. The clashing roller coaster tracks darken. The bitter mix of pop songs mutes to its core. Look, talk soft. It's only us now. Sandusky Bay. I was sleeping when we passed your house. It was late. You were sleeping too. In the middle of the water, in the middle of the night on Sandusky Bay, suddenly the floating train. Far away, the street posts brandished hot fruit over cars. It was too dark to see the rusts and bolts that made the bridge, only lines of light in the inlet, the wavering view. Shadowing Vesuvius. In a Neapolitan museum, allegorical paintings. The veneer of painted skin has worn away from some of the bodies, leaving them skeletal, structural. The artful slope of one fibula stays with me. In Rome, an obscure Franciscan crypt displays a regulation habit in a glass case, minuscule Bibles, and a few paintings of notable friars. At the exhibit's end, an elaborate celebration of human mortality, one monk's passion. He sculpted cartloads of bones into chandeliers, stacked them, piled skulls, decorated the ceiling in whorls. A few posed figures, after centuries, still wore a layer of desiccated flesh. And I in awe, as though the candle of myself had dimmed. Okay. The dead Black girl doesn't care what we call the dead Black girl. The dead Black girl is a daffodil on the table wrapped in newsprint. The daffodil is dead also, decomposing in a black trash bag. The dead Black girl is abandoned on the curb. We put her there. Even you, who tells the legend one Black girl whispers to another to prevent our own vanishing. This feels really good, guys. It's weird. I wasn't sure if remote poetry reading would be a wonderful thing, but it really is. Thank you, Nina. Thank you for inviting me.
We're great to have you.
Caldera. 8 hours standing, stocking beer coolers before the local men shuffled in after work, brown and worn from building in the sun, or windburned, caked with ocean salt. I wiped fat off the cylinders of the hot dog machine until I smelled metal, made change, spoke to anyone. The man who bought a Klondike bar most afternoons, the girl who brought Tupperware of tuna poke her mother made to sell. Mostly I was alone. When I was sure they'd all gone home, I flicked the lights and the locks. I turned my back to town and walked along stone walls studded with hibiscus and palms, all blue so late. The street radiated fever. The misanthropic sea hissed. Space grew long, polishing its dark blade, stars 2,000 nicks on its edge. The old volcano beckoned me to burn my loneliness, to sacrifice my sorrow to the attic of the sky. Heat and the Sirens Return, Chicago poem. Here we go. Kind of, mostly, yes, Chicago poem. The birds but come from us, high, sharp and hollow boned. O violent flute, sorry litany, brute herald. O shark at the end of the world, shark with abacus eyes. A high school teacher in Chicago, in Baltimore, a mother, wait to read letters in the blood we float. Okay, the long walk home. My mother, merciless with grammar, had me reading long before I learned to tie my shoes. Perhaps that's why I've always mistrusted straightforward kindness. I'm waiting for the trap to spring, skittish as anything furred and built of meat. Maybe that's the reason I keep walking away from this poem. You are impossible. You follow me down wells across the blackened plains. When I stop breathing, you pump my lungs yourself. I snarl, go away. I bought this pain, only to earn your enviable smile. Now look what you've done, stroking my hair that way. My solitude becomes intolerable, and I sigh at the creeping vines. Okay, I'm gonna do like 3 more. Is that okay? Great. When the man talked around me, when he talked over me. Then he became a fish swimming backwards, and the lanternfish mimicked a beacon, a lighthouse built too far inland, a building of trapdoors and stairways to nowhere. Observe, if you will, his absence of meaning. Once I followed a ghost through a decade of night. In the world of men, I sewed my tongue into a stone and grew small. It was how to survive. I've removed vertebrae as a parlor trick. I sawed off my feet and sanded my limbs down gradually, an inch or so at a time. I whittled my breasts and hips away. I sewed my tongue into a stone where it shriveled and curled, desiccated, the frond of a fern. Soon I was so tiny I could be carried around in a shirt pocket. Food costs were down, but I wanted to be smaller still. I wanted to pass through the eye of a needle. Before long, even atoms loomed over me. I was good at my job, very good at my job. You'd be surprised how easy it was. Okay, this poem is called Processional. He lifts my grandmother's body. A sheaf of reeds he picked himself, cattails rustling in the wind. He carries her as though he meant to make something useful, to weave a basket, to give those bones the benefit of new intention. This is what they mean when they say good man. They mean a love strong enough to smile as though he could lift her anywhere, carry her down the aisle with my father and the other white-gloved men. Okay, guess I will do one more. Whew, fantastic. Guys, thank you so much for being here. Nina, again, thank you for inviting me. Traveling Molly's, this has been fantastic. I haven't been to a poetry reading in so long. This is so good. And Sandra, oh my God, thank you. It's such a pleasure to finally get to read with you or like to see you. I don't know, to hear you. It's great. This poem is called Genre. When I almost fell out of the world, Christina grabbed my arm like we were in some action movie. I mean, I made my life an action movie or a sordid drama co-starring a redhead in a bustier. Rather, we told ourselves a joke, 3 poets and a light bulb. My ex wept and wept. I mean, he simply would not stop. Nothing could stanch that sad, and my blood wanted to fall out of my body. So we went on a buddy adventure without each other. He to the desert, I to an island in the middle of the Pacific. I thought I was the diva in a tragic opera, but in hindsight, it was a 1-panel comic or chick lit. I was, after all, a woman making her way. Still, I wanted to fall out of the world. My mother came to visit, but left me buildings romaning under some mango tree. Then Christina came, which might have turned my life into a fairy tale, only the 3rd fairy never arrived to save the day. Before the big reveal, you should know, this was never an erotic novel. Christina and I hiked to a nude beach where she showed off the neat fluff of her New York pussy. the cultivated cunt to my feral thatch. Those whiskers whispered to me, and Christina grinned like she had made decisions. I wanted to make decisions again, my own, bigger than a razor and falling out of the world. Not an erotic novel, but a hotly contested feminist tract, or a Bible story revolving around a woman and a burning bush. It was time to get back to it, to tell the tale. So maybe you were the third fairy, dear reader, a part of the prophecy that brought me back to. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, Laura, it's so good to hear you again. Actually, I only heard you once before, and that was at Marty McConnell's, one of her salons.
Marty's so good, yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, in what ways you feel like your poetry has changed from those days, and in what way it's the same or similar?
That's a really good question. I think the main way I feel different as a writer is I don't care as much what other people think anymore. I mean, it's a pleasure. It's a real pleasure to be reading for people. And I'm very happy when people laugh at my jokes and when people like are hurt when I'm hurt and feel what I feel. But I don't feel as insecure as I used to. And I think part of that maybe just be like, it may just have to do with like growing older as a woman, you know? I don't feel as insecure, and that is so nice, you know?
Any similarities that have carried through from those days?
I mean, being in Chicago, you know, it just was wonderful to be around people who were so serious about art, you know, who were serious about writing and devoted and respectful of their own talent and other people's talent. It was, I mean, a fantastic place to grow. And I am forever grateful. I'm deeply grateful to that. I think that's what I've carried with me.
Great. I want to ask you a question about the Cave Canem book, All Blue So Late. Where can people get it? Do you want to say just a little bit about what, if anything, holds it together?
Sure. I mean, most of the poems I read tonight were from the book, and you can either go to my website, laura3names.com, or you can also get it on the Northwestern site. See, Chicago doing more amazing things for my life. Northwestern University sells it as well, and they've been fantastic as a press. There's sadness in the book. There's darkness. I'm not going to lie, you know. Like some of it was going back to myself as a 14-year-old, like when I hit puberty and sort of suddenly started getting depressed and started thinking about my place in the world. But overall, I think it's about resilience, you know. It's about finding ways to be aware of what's going on in the world, but to still find joy and to still have connections and community and to be engaged without being in despair.
Great. And for all of you listening and from YouTube and the open micers and Zoom, your job is to buy books and enrich not only yourselves, but the poets. At least, you know, I've had this thing about what would a poet's labor be worth per page? And I'm thinking maybe penny, maybe, or an hour or something like that. So yes, buy their books. Speaking of Northwestern's press, I spoke with Parnisha Jones, and she and her staff are going to try to put together a reading for the anthology that about the history of slam. And do you know anything more about it than that?
No, I don't, but she's amazing. She was my editor, and she is fantastic. So everything she touches is golden, in my humble opinion. So
keep your eyes open for that. I don't know what month that's going to be coming, but probably in the next couple of months. If you want to follow us, Traveling Mollies on Facebook, and stay tuned. We have this open mic. We pick 10 people from everyone who lets us know that they'd want to be considered. And it was so good to see you all and hear you all, and not see those of you in YouTube but we know that you're out there. Kurt, is there anything that I'm forgetting other than to thank you yet again?
Oh, you don't need to thank me again. I'm copacetic. I think our crowd here on Zoom want to express some of their thanks to each other. It's been a very lovely night. Lovely to hear Laura. Lovely to hear Sandra. And now everyone who wants to unmute, let your thanks be heard. It's a good time. Good to see you, Laura. Yeah. We've been catching each other's acknowledgments in back channel on the chat line. Now we can actually say them out
now
loud.
we can talk. It's so nice.
Thank you for having me. I love this.
Likewise. You all are very alive. So it's beautiful.
We need that in this time.
Yes, absolutely.
I have one thing to say before wrapping up. This reading will be available on YouTube. Kurt, it's usually just a couple days, right?
Generally, it only takes just a little bit of time for it to come through. It might even be hours, but you want to look up the channel on YouTube that Al DeGenova keeps. I think it's under his name, but you'll find it with the other programs we've done heretofore, as well as occasionally now stuff that he does for After Hours magazine, which he publishes. He and Pat Riddell also publish that.
Can't hear you.
I hear you. Something happened.
All right. Well, all I'm saying is the recording's up there by the end of the night, and check it out. And signing off. See you next month. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks for sending the
Thank you,
mood.
Kurt. Thank you, Sandra. Thank
Bye.
you, everybody.
Thanks
Fantastic.
everyone.
everybody. Take
Good
care.
job.
Thank you.
Hi, Donna.